Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Tonight, an interview of Keith Emerson, Greg Lake, and Carl Palmer.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. Life's not short, don't let your money slide. Waiting show, it happened out and you gotta see the show. It's a dynamo, you gotta see the show. It's rock and roll, oh, right before your eyes. Feel the laughter from the skies. And he laughs until he cries, and he dies, and he dies. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. You gotta see the show. It's a dynamo, you gotta see the show. It's rock and roll, oh.
If you have been a regular listener to Interview these past 2 years, you have by now come to know that one trademark of this radio hour is that we have very few trademarks, save for one, innovation. Interview has from the beginning set out to try and reflect each group that we have met in a personal and individual manner. In keeping with this concept, tonight you will hear not one, but actually 3 separate interviews. Each of them was taped at a different time over a period of 4 days in Los Angeles. Now, each encounter was done with the individual members of Emerson, Lake and Palmer on a one-to-one basis. And so, we decided to present the show this way in an attempt to give the most accurate interview possible of these 3 very different personalities. Now, the first segment will deal with Keith Emerson, the second with Greg Lake, and the third with Carl Palmer. And segment 4 will contain a combination of the 3. So if you're ready, I'd like you to meet Keith Emerson.
Well, I didn't have much of a musical education. I mean, my musical education existed in the form of an 80-year-old teacher by the name of Miss Marshall. And she came around every Saturday morning, gave me lessons, you know?
Miss Marshall.
Yes, and that lasted for about, say, 4 or 5 years. What came out of that was that I could read music, and I could play, and I understood a bit of theory. After that, I taught myself. Now, I didn't study harmony and composition and counterpoint and all that sort of thing. This was all done, basically, by... I bought books and read about whatever I wanted to do. Maybe it's an orchestration. I'd buy a book on it and read it up and then do an orchestration. When I started writing fugues, I bought a book on how a fugue is constructed, and it's constructed quite mathematically, really. And just making various notes and studying how the Bach fugues flowed, I based my fugues around that way.
When you say to yourself, God, I hear this thing that I want to do, and you know, it's an electronic thing, and I want to create this sound or have this ability or alternative to use on stage, yet you know, it's not in an equipment catalog, or you haven't seen it in a music store. How do you go about translating that into a physical instrument or tool or knob that appears on your board?
Well, there are certain sounds which I know through past experience, and I know how to go about wiring it up for that particular sound. But usually if I'm arranging a new piece of music, I don't want to use any of those sounds which I know about already. If I've got the sound in my head and I go, ah, yes, I know how to go about that and wire it up, you know. I could do it that way, but usually what I tend to do is from time to time, in my experimenting, I come across a thing quite by accident. I go, yo, that's fantastic, you know, and I jot that down. And usually at that time when I hear that particular sound, I say, well, I know what that's going to be used for, you know. That's exactly what I want. The sound that I use at the beginning of Hoedown, you know, do-ya. Sort of like a big wailing sort of thing. That was discovered completely by accident, and just straight away, just in the spur of the moment, I said, that is the sound for hoedown, and it went in straight away.
So it's more or less of a fact of stumbling on something and then maybe cataloging it for when it'll work. And
Yes.
I see. But
I mean, obviously, at the time when I came up with that, just for instance, the hoedown sound, I mean, I did experiment that with a few other ideas which were kicking around in my head at the time, that effect. But it didn't go anywhere, it didn't fit anywhere else. It was just so natural to go there. There was one interesting period that I went through. I was really down one day, and I took a load of downers. I took about 10 Mandys or something, you know?
Mm.
And I was really, really zonked, you know, and they rang up, they said, "You coming down the studio today?"
Uh-huh.
And, Jesus, you know, mouth was all dried up.
See, this is
I felt like a big piece of blotting paper, you know? So I staggered down the studio, and I fell at the piano, you know. And I said, "Okay, what are we doing today then?" "Oh, yeah. How about show me the way to go home?" All right, so I just poured myself a drink, you know, staggered, you know. I just felt in that sort of like laid-back mood, you know, falling everywhere. And Greg said, "All right then, great." So he said, "I'll sing at the same time," which is the only time he's ever done that, you know, sung at the same time as we've laid down the instruments and everything. It was all one-off thing. We did about 140 takes. Not for my part. I improvised the whole thing every time. Each take was totally improvised. But Greg wanted to keep going over it because he wanted the diction on this word done, and he wasn't pleased with that, you know, so it had to be done again, you know. And I was getting a bit fed up after about the 100th take because, like, I thought I'd been doing pretty well. I hadn't managed to copy an intro once in that time, you know. Every intro I'd done, every song was a gem as far as I was concerned, you know.
What do you want from me?
But, yeah, and in the end I suggested, well, look, why don't you put your vocals on afterwards, you know, because I was, my eyelids were kept up in my matchsticks at that time. And he said, no, he wanted to do it at that time, so I had, you know, 40 more takes. And it's come out pretty good, actually. We stuck some orchestra on it at the end, and that's going to be on Volume 2.
It will be on Volume 2 in that manner, far out?
Yes.
That's far out.
I made an abrupt stop of all that. I remember the date. It was January the 12th of this year. And I had a final rave-up party. You know, Greg was around my house, and a good friend of mine, Alvin Lee. And we ate and we drank ourselves silly, and at the end of the meal, brought the mirror out, right? Look out with a big rock, and boy, did we get ripped. And at 12 o'clock, when 12 o'clock came, I said, that's it, finished, no more. I didn't want to stop on the 13th, because I thought it'd be unlucky. And I finished then, you know, didn't touch anymore.
But just blow it out at all at once and get it.
Yeah,
nice
that's right.
Way
Yeah,
to end it.
yeah. It was a great party, you know. I mean, at the end of it, you know, we were up until about right through the night, till the morning, and madness developed through the night, and we sort of we got up, and me and Alvin just like went out for a run, and we went down to the beach. And instead of stopping at the beach, we just kept on running into the sea.
Just take a pebble and cast it to the sea. Then watch the ripples that unfold into me. My face spills so gently into your eyes, disturbing the waters on your grass. Wounded words of laughter are graveyards of the past. Photographs are grey and torn, scattered in your fields. Letters of your memories are not real.
I think that a musician gains a lot if he puts himself through many stages of consciousness. And I guess out of all occupations, the musician goes to about the most extremes in order to find what is best for him. And I guess I've really covered everything that there is to cover.
Keith Emerson will return in the last segment of the show. Next up, you meet Greg Lake when Interview returns. Hello, I'm Jim Ladd, and if you just joined us, there are two things that you should know. Now, number one is you're late. And number two is you're about to meet Greg Lake as our interview of Emerson, Lake and Palmer continues.
Unbelievable, isn't it? It's against us today, you know.
It's a what?
It is against us.
You know, it feels like there's some kind of a planet out of alignment or...
You know, it's totally wrong here because the telephone's going to ring in a minute. I know it. You know, I'm just going to get it all together, then it's going to go.
It's going to go
ring, right?
Well, that's okay. We can always edit around it. You know what I'm saying? Can you move your microphone up a little bit?
Yes, I can. Should I put it on this side?
No, where it was good. Just move it up closer to yourself.
There?
Yeah. I think we should say that we're sitting at the mouth of, I guess what it is Long Beach Harbor.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people going by in small boats. And it's real loud here because it's in between both shores, so you get the noise, man. But screw it. If you want to hear what Greg Lake has to say, we'll have to put up with a couple of power boats. That's it. Let's talk about your writing here for a moment, which is extremely interesting to me. The song on the Works album, which is a phenomenal album. I mean, I don't know how you put into a spoken word what is found on that record. I think it's really a special piece. There's a song on there that I like very much that seemed kind of out of place in the 70s because people aren't putting out that kind of energy, which is Hallowed Be Thy Name. I really like that tune. And I hope they're having fun. You know, that's all.
Yeah, I wish they'd sing, man. I'd love to see one of them go down. Energy and Hallowed Be Thy Name, yes.
I mean, you spoke very, very, very bluntly about some things going down, and that's refreshing, you know, to hear.
In a way, it's a protest song, you know. And as such, I suppose it's a bit corny. There was an age when there was a lot of protest songs, wasn't there? But it was you know, you just can't help it. There are things that go on these days that still I feel the same way about as I did 10 years ago. They peeve me, some things. So, I mean, they come out in my writing.
There may be an open moment, but there's very few folk in focus. Not the first, not the last, not the least. You needn't be well to be wealthy, but you've got to be whole to be holy. Fetch the robe, fetch the cloth, fetch the priest. Oh, this planet of ours is a mess. I bet heaven's the same. Look, the madman said, son, as a friend, tell me what's in a name. Hallowed be thy name.
Artists are sensitive people as well, you know. I mean, I'm sensitive. And you know, I don't presume really to know anything. But I mean, I just understand small atoms of things, you know, and I string them together and it makes a song. And that, really, rather than communicating a message, it's a question of communicating a feeling. And I think that's what music's done in the last 10, 15 years, is raise the feeling and the spirit of people and help them to grow through their young life.
How long ago did you write the song Lucky Man now? How long was that?
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
I wrote that when I was a boy, little boy, 12 years old.
All right.
It's true, I did. I wrote that when I was...
When you were 12 years old? Well, now that you have your own white horses and all of that, are you happy as that cat, or are you unhappy as you thought he would be when you were 12?
Yeah, I consider myself a lucky man, yeah. But your happiness quotient isn't really affected by how much money you've got, you know? You don't feel any happier, actually.
You may feel luckier, but not happier.
Well, you just know that you've got a lot of money. That's all you know. I mean, that's the end of it. Then what are you going to do? You can't sit and think about that all day. You've got to go out and, you know? It becomes actually, it's not very important. It's not very important, really.
So you didn't fall into the trap that you wrote about at that point?
Oh, yeah, I did. You know, I did all the things that everyone does, you know. Bought a big house, big car, everything. And then got rid of it all.
He had white horses and ladies by the score, all dressed in satin and waiting by the door. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. White lace and feathers, they made up his bed. A gold-covered mattress on which he was led. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was.
How much power do you think you have over the audience?
It would seem as though one has an immense amount of power over an audience because of how many people there are and the fact that they've come to see me, us. But the fact of the matter is that really I relate to them more as one person, individual people, rather than a mass of people. There's no actual power there. You know, they're not going to do anything that you tell them. It's a question of it seeming a powerful position. It's not really a powerful position. You're offering something.
So you give people more due than to be a mob or a herd?
They're not a mob, no. A mob's got a motive, you know. They got
Well, our motive's been drugged out of us a long time ago. I mean,
That's right.
Who can see the motive at this point? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just that, you know, it seems more powerful than it is, perhaps. Just the general fact that people demand you to be some sort of powerful, extraordinary person. It is true that perhaps a person in my position is more worldly than a lot of people, but that's all, you know. I'm just a singer, really. Everybody involved in it thinks that that's the way it should be, you know. They think that's the way all that chaos and stuff should be happening, you know. People everywhere and bodies here and 1,000 policemen and, you know, I suppose it's necessary. They tell me it is, but it's the nature of our business. I suppose that because the events are so big, that's it. You get so many people coming to one event, there's got to be some commotion, you know, and there's always people backstage and oh dear, you know. I mean, it is a really colourful event backstage.
Yes.
You know, an incredible spectacle. And one tends to forget that because of the inconvenience of hustling through it, but it's beautiful, really. All the painted ladies and, oh my God, it's wonderful.
You wanna be an angel, you wanna be a star, wanna play some magic on my guitar. You wanna be a poet, you wanna be my spring. You could be anything. Do you wanna be the lover of another? Undercover, you could even be the man on the moon. Do you wanna be the player? Do you wanna be the string? Let me tell you something. It just don't mean a thing. You see, it really doesn't matter when you're buried in disguise by the dark glass on your eyes. Though your flesh has crystallized, still you turn me on. Still you turn me on. You turn me on. Wanna be the pillow where I lay my head. Do you wanna be the feathers lying in my bed? Do you wanna be a color cover magazine? Create a scene. Every day a little sadder, a little madder. Someone get me a ladder. Wanna be the singer? Wanna be the song? Let me tell you something. You just couldn't be more wrong. You see, I really have to tell you that it all gets so intense. From my experience, it just doesn't seem to make sense. Still, you turn me on. You turn me on. You turn me on.
Keith and Greg will be back during the conclusion of tonight's interview, and we'll meet Carl Palmer in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. I'd like you to meet the drummer, Carl Palmer. So yesterday I didn't do you because you had to go shopping, you know, so it's either the Shishi Bar or 49 million people. You can make a choice here now that we got the tape recorder on and I've given you fair warning.
All right, let's go. Shoot.
All right. Sitting here with Carl Palmer. We're in a hotel in L.A. And you just got through with what kind of martial arts lesson? Say that.
It's called Wado, or they pronounce it in Japan, Wadoryu. I looked at my body. I looked at a physical and mental attitude which I was developing. And I wanted to prolong it and give it more sustaining power, not to deteriorate it.
But this is just the best form rather than doing it through a chemical stimulus or a...
Yeah, I'm really not into that, you see. I'm not into any, like, drugs or any chemical stimulants at all. I don't really see any necessary reason for them.
And so karate for you is a vehicle or kind of a drug to do that?
It's one. It's one. There are many, but it's one.
What's another for you?
I don't have another on which I can perform whilst I'm touring, but there are others for me. I like to read a lot. I also play golf. I mean, there are many things which will stimulate you, you know, and get you out of that consciousness.
When you are doing this and you're on tour and people like me come and take up your time, do you see that as like a necessary thing to do? Is it more of a hassle than it is worthwhile?
If what you're being asked is of a musical content, because that's the reason why I'm here, then I see it very necessary. If it's to talk about drugs and why I don't take them or why I've given them up, I don't find that very necessary, because that's like, it's too personal, right? To ask me if I'm involved in the martial arts, I can say yes. To ask me why I do it, I can answer you and say, I do it because it takes up a certain amount of time each day. I find that kind of unnecessary to talk about, right? I would rather talk about music more and talk about, you know, what I've got around me to make my music better. And this basically is to make my music better.
I understand. That's a very honest answer. A very honest answer. I think that why it's interesting to people is it gives them a view of what, another view of your music and the input that goes into it. I think is why, rather than you know, let's talk about drugs. You know, I'm not. I don't mean it quite on that level, but I think it is interesting to, as a human being who is.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's obviously to look at the person's makeup and see how he ticks. Yeah. But,
and also how you handle it too, because a lot of people get ground under in this profession, and some people come through, and you seem to be someone who has got a handle on it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, as I said to you, like, I've been playing for 16 years. I mean, it's a long time, right? If you do anything for 16 years, that's like 3/4 of my life I've been doing it. It's a long time. You've either got to get straight during that time and wise up to what you're going to be, how you want to be it, or, you know, you really don't, I want to be playing forever, you see. I want to be an artist, I want to be a performer for a long time. So I'm looking at longevity. I don't really want to be a good-looking rock star and have, like, you know, a nice-looking corpse in the box and in the ground and everyone saying, yeah, he was a great drummer.
The Works album, let's go with that for a moment. Obviously, Emerson, Lake and Palmer have taken a lot of steps and broken a lot of ground. To some artists would be considered pretty risky. Has the album been accepted as you would hope that it would be?
I don't think we actually pulled it off like you say. I think from a stage point of view, presentation of orchestra and group, I think we managed to pull that off. I think the way the album was accepted to the general public, I don't think that was how we saw it. I mean, we expected the album to be bigger, more popular than what it was, but basically the problem was the material wasn't as commercial as it should have been. Or, should I say, we designed it as is. We didn't go out of our way to make it more commercial, but the people aren't really ready for group and orchestra the way that we've presented it as yet, because it's not a new thing, but it's never been designed quite like we've designed it. In other words, a guy having a side each on the album, and the group coming together collectively and playing a piece which was specifically written for group and orchestra, such as the Pirates, rather than adding an orchestra to a group which is playing already, which is the general thing that goes down when group and orchestra get together. So I think it's been a little difficult for the public to grasp hold of what we're trying to put across. But on the other hand, I think the music has more longevity, so I think it will have sustaining power, and in the end, I think it will actually come through and people will understand that album, and it will possibly sell for a long time.
When it comes down to the three of you sit down, you do this, and obviously some work and thought went into this. Does it really matter to you at this point if it sells or doesn't sell?
As far as it being like successful and accepted commercially, yes, it makes a big difference, because the final thing one can do after you've gone through a writing, a recording, a rehearsing period, a release date period, you finally hit live dates, and that's the full stop. That's the last thing you can do to promote any material. And if you can't do that, it's a shame. You can only do that if you've got money, especially if you're carrying around an orchestra of 70 players. So I am disturbed if it doesn't fly out of the racks. Of course I am, because it's taken over 2 years to get together.
Do you think that Emerson, Lake and Palmer, although you have obviously built an incredible following, do you think that you run to that possible point of being so educated in music and working so hard at it that you've almost blown past your audience ability to conceive it?
Yeah, but I think that if you wish to pioneer music in any shape or form, you can't really wait for your audience to grow up and catch you up. You've got to keep going yourself and hope that eventually they do catch on. I mean, like our very first album, which was released here in America, wasn't a commercial album. Had one track on it which was commercial, which did very well, which was Lucky Man. But the actual music itself was quite complex music. And if you want to pioneer, push music forward, you have to do it regardless to the, you know, to the public, to whether they're going to like it or dislike it, whether they're grown up enough to understand it or not. I'm sure a lot of people don't understand a piano concerto and how it's made up of 3 movements or 4 movements if you include a scherzo. I'm sure they don't understand that. But you can't sit around and wait for them to understand that. If you don't put it together yourself and pioneer and push it forward, who is going to do it? Nobody. So you do it yourself, and you do it at your own risk of your career. Financially, you're at risk because it's a very big obligation to take X amount of people on the road, i.e. an orchestra, to promote such a product. But that's what music's all about. It's how much you can pioneer in a short space of time you're given. In other words, whilst you're popular like we are, we should get through as much as what we can. It seems to be something that any musician of any caliber would want to do eventually in his life, at some time in his life. I'm just very pleased that I can do it whilst I'm young.
What is it, after these 16 years, what is the biggest get-off for you now? Is it...
I think realizing the skills that I have now is a big get-off for me. You know, what can I tell you? I am good.
You are good. Was that something that you had to fight, like an insecurity thing? I'm not good, this guy's better?
Absolutely. I mean, I was rubbish at school in every possible subject. And music was something which I grabbed hold of by the horns, and I rode it all the way.
And said, this one I'm going to be good at?
No, my father said this is the one you're going to be good at an early age of 11. You know, I really appreciate that now, because I never thought that I never dreamt for 1 minute that I was a natural musician, and I still don't. But due to my perseverance and discipline, it's kind of got that way over a period of time, and it's only because of him, right, saying, come on, let's check this out. So that's the most precious thing to me right now, is the skill which I've obtained over the years.
There might have been things I missed, but don't be unkind. It don't mean I'm blind. Perhaps there's a thing or two I think of lying in bed I shouldn't have said, but there it is. You see, it's all clear. You are meant to be here. From the beginning. Maybe I might have changed, not been so cruel, not been such a fool. Whatever was done is done. I just can't recall. It doesn't matter at all. You see, it's all clear. You are meant to be here. From the beginning.
We'll be back with Keith Emerson, Greg Lake, Carl Palmer, and a triangular perspective on ELP when Inner View continues. As I'm sure you have surmised by now, all three of these gentlemen come from very different points of view. Yet it is fascinating how similarly they all see the group as a whole. Now, to show this, I asked Keith, Greg, and Carl to explain the relationship as they saw it by answering the rumor that although Emerson, Lake, and Palmer unquestionably make gifted music together, personally, they do not get along well. There's been so much talk lately about the interaction between the three of you and how strained it has been.
Strained?
Yes, it's real strained.
Oh, yeah?
And I'll set you an example and then just ask you to comment on it.
Yeah.
I've heard things like they won't ride in the same car together.
Oh, I see.
They won't, but on the level of they won't ride in the same car together. They won't stay at the same hotel together. Why do you think this has come about?
What is fact is we don't ride in the same limo, but it's not a question of that we won't. We often do. If there aren't three limousines at the airport, we all get in one, you know. But when we do have three limos, we use them because, like, Carl's got to get off and he wants to get his lessons in, and maybe Greg will run off and, you know, go off and do some shopping. Maybe I'll want to get back to the hotel and do whatever, you know. You know, sound checks, we go there at different times, you know. And, you know, we meet up at the end of a concert. It's usually by chance, maybe. I happen to be sitting next to Greg, you know. And we get into a good rap, you know. And it's more interesting then, you know, because maybe I haven't spoken to him for about 2 days, you know. The most time that we talk is just before we're going on stage, you know. We're standing in the wings and we get all, you know, like, what was that one that you had last night? All right.
Did you see those men too?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Wow. You know, there's another aspect of it is like I never make it a point of getting too close to the people which I work with. You know, that includes like managers and everything like that. You know,
You keep a space.
I keep a certain space there. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because that way I can really speak my mind when you know, if there's a matter and I've got a very important point to put across, I can then say it without affecting a friendship or anything like that. Whereas, like, I might be frightened of, like, hurting the guy's feelings, you know, if I really knew him as a buddy and as a mate, you know. We had that sort of situation in the Nice where we were mates, you know, we used to go out together and spend evenings together. But when it came to when the band split up and everything, it was hard. And it hit the other two like a ton of bricks. And I don't want that to happen again, you know. I mean, obviously, if things start to go a bit funny, you know, obviously, we know each other inside out now, all of us, you know. And if one of us happens to be looking a bit miserable for a great deal of time, what we do is, like, maybe the other two get together and say, well, look, I've been noticing this about him, you know. Don't you think we should get it out in the open? So, you know, we'll like, sort of like get together and discuss it. Maybe the other person's, oh, I didn't know I was being like that, you know, and it comes as quite as a shock, you know. Then you clear the air and things are fine.
I'll be there, I'll be there, we'll be there.
We respect each other and treat each other with respect and get on very well together. We don't agree about everything. No groups do, and certainly don't after as long as we've been together. We don't hang out socially because it would just be too much. And we've just done a 15-week tour. Now, to go back to England and hang out with these guys would be just absurd, right? So when we've got time off, people see us on our own doing things, and they say, oh, man, those cats, you know, they really don't like each other's company. It isn't true. It's just that we have so much of each other on the road that we don't sit in the same place together. Also, we try and draw on different influences away from the band, you know, so that we got something different to talk about. It's just like a marriage, really. If you sit in one room together, you know, you'll run out of things to talk about eventually. It'll become a very silent business. But maybe the rumours started because we had that long period when we did no interviews, and the reason we did that was because we just had nothing to say during that period. You know, we had nothing to talk about, and so then people immediately started saying, you know, maybe they've broken up, or...
two human beings or three human beings cannot be with each other all the time and always be new and interesting and fresh. That is a law against nature or something.
That's right. And yet, I tell you something, we probably have a better relationship than we've ever had. We respect and regard each other much, much more now than we did in the first year we were together. We've got a reason to continue. We just felt that Emerson, Lake and Palmer had more to offer and more distance to cover yet.
I'll be there, I'll be there, we'll be there.
Is there a rift between the three of you? Do you get along as good as you sound like you must on record to make that kind of music, or is it extremely strained, the relationship?
Any relationship gets strained. Every relationship can be incredibly happy. It really depends on how you design it. We design the social activities of the band in such a way that they will work towards the working relationship of the band. In other words, socially, we spend, out of 100%, maybe 30% together. The remainder of the time, we spend on our own. The reason being, if we were together all of the time socially, drinking, eating, going out, chicks or whatever, conversation would become stale, the individual would lose his identity. Kind of like a marriage. If you sit at home all day with your wife, she'll become a very boring object. You know, after you've screwed her as many times as you want to screw her, that's it, you know, you might as well put her in the closet. Same with the band. Unless I go out and I experience things in everyday life, I can't make conversation with the band fruitful and encouraging and interesting, which is the most important thing. So socially, we are Emerson, Lake, and I'm Palmer.
Just a step, cried the sad man. Take a look down at the madman. Theater kings on silver wings fly beyond reason. From the flight of the seagull come the spread claws of the eagle. Only fear breaks the silence as we all kneel, brave for guidance. Tread the road, cross the abyss, take a look down at the madness. On the streets of the city, only specters still have pity. Patient cues for the gallows, sing the praises of the hallowed. Our machines feed the furnace, if they take us, they will burn us.
I hope that you've enjoyed tonight's interview and that it may have brought you some insight into Emerson, Lake and Palmer, both as people and at the same time as a powerful synergistic force in rock. I'd like to express my personal thanks to both Tony Mandich and Steve Rowland from Atlantic Records for their help in arranging these three conversations under rather unusual circumstances. And also special thanks to Tom Moeller for a fine dinner, 3 rides in the limo, and some good conversation. Also, special thanks go to Jack Morris of Interview Incorporated, and of course to you for joining me tonight for this interview of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I'm Jim Ladd.